Good morning. My name's Graham. Through these series of videos I'm making and putting on the web, they're basically for my grandchildren. They're also basically for those very few people who watch them. They then be alerted to the certain truths and facts, analysed objectively and impartially. I'm not a young man. I've spent a lifetime trying to understand phenomena and then be able to explain it as simply as possible. I spent my early years learning about Jesus and most of my life learning about science and the meaning of things. But eventually I wrote and put together my work in a book called One Law and the Challenge of Eve, Philosophy of Human Sexuality and Evolution, What is the Meaning of Life? Why are we who and what we are and what could we be, if you like? And to those who wonder what the meaning of life is, it's simple. It's very, very simple. There's no complexity in this. Regardless of all what they told, it's simplicity in itself. The meaning of life is to live for yourself in the most moral principle way you can. We all learn as we're teenagers, we make mistakes and all that. But by experience and because of the practical grounding from our parents, we then carry on and learn that they were right. We have moral principles and we keep ourselves healthy and we pass on those principles to our grandchildren. We hope as grandparents that we've passed on or formatted in our grandchildren basic principles and good genetic potential to pass on and carry on through the generations and improve our genetic line. That is basically the meaning of life in a nutshell. That is the meaning of life. It's an individual's, if you like, intrinsic responsibility towards their own genetic outcomes for into the future. That is the great equalizer of all people. So that means all people should be aware of that, and then they are as equal as anyone else. There's no illusions of grandeur for the person or the poorest people to imagine their children can be the greatest people. That is normal and natural. That is equality in itself. To have this ambition for your children to go on and survive, and their generations to go down the line. And this is what the elite understand, but they don't want to explain to people. They want to tell people a mass of lies, and there's conspiracy within politics, the media, educators, and the miasma of their dishonesty now towards feeding into the young is a counter-productive, and it's counterintuitive, and it's counter to rational logic and moral principles. And it's the idea of it is to undermine society, to destroy society. That's a simple fact of the matter. I won't be just boring down a Yorkshireman. I'm not trying to be popular. That is the last thing I care for. This is just for my grandchildren basically. So I'll just put it down in this format in YouTube. And I want to talk about climate change itself. They have been saying this for 20 years. They're using the wrong science. John Lomborg, the Danish economic scientist, is into the correct science. Myself being a Yorkshireman, inherit the Danish trait of being objectively honest and rational about what's going on. That's the difference between the northern people and maybe the rest of the planet in some ways. Although one suspects the Chinese have taken up the rational approach towards climate change and going to trying to create a situation so they survive. We're doing the opposite in Australia and other places where they're trying to destroy our economy, so therefore fewer people can survive if there is a climate crisis. If this climate thing is the truth, then it's not a global problem as they say. That's irrational, because there is no global harmony, there is no global synchronicity and empathy at the moment. It's everyone, every nation for themselves. Every and a nation is a cultural organism, if you like, just same as bacteria in a watch glass is a cultural organism, and it's well, if you put two opposing bacteria in a glass, what you call watch glass in the lab, one will eat the other, and basically that sums up human society. Although it's trying to learn to get on, although it says it's trying to learn to get on, since certain elements have taken over the UN, they're now beginning to act against that and using the media they own and the politicians they own and the corporate systems they own, sector they own, to basically then conspire to undermine the future of humanity, because they think they don't need as many humans because of robots and AI. They know they don't. They know they do not need as many, and I think if they clear it out, they can make earthly a paradise again without all the humans polluting it. That is their plan. That is their plan. It's obvious because of what they're doing to the young, creating an asthma, if you like, to their future by getting young women to hate men, so they won't be breeding, so therefore they have no genetic future. That eliminates those people, and then they crowd people into England and Europe, and therefore creating massive frictions within the population as well, which is actually, or it doesn't make any sense whatsoever what they're doing. In other words, it's cruel, it's evil, and it's counter to positive evolution, and it's counter to a positive Christian and moral approach to life. Because the thing of climate change, if it's a problem, and what is the problem, you have to say what is the problem, what is the challenge. The problem is water and food, providing enough water and food for the people, and making sure the economic paradigm, if you like, is such that the people are not struggling to pay their bills, their household bills, electricity bills and stuff like this. The basic static capital, I call them, I call these things the basic needs. If people are struggling to pay those things, then they're going to struggle when, if this climate change is a serious matter, more and more people are poorer and poorer. The rich, the elite, are making people poorer and poorer. The poor, the masses of poor, are going to really suffer through climate, if there's a climate change was serious. So, in other words, they're doing exactly the opposite what you would do if you cared about humanity, and they're giving exactly the opposite messages to what an intelligent and principled person would do if they cared about humanity and its survival. They're doing everything opposite, if you like, to what ought to be done if they cared about humanity and its surviving. Now, the problem with humanity as they see it is there are far too many people. Now that's a matter of individual perspective, whether there is or not, and whether there are too many humans on the planet or not. That's if you're one of those individuals, you don't think you're surplus. You think and know that you're important to yourself. That's the intrinsic equality value, if you like. That individual is an individual different from all other individuals within any culture or a group that has a potential to go on and regenerate and become a whole group in themselves. Each individual has got a potential to create a whole new genre of phenotype, if you like. And so to say that some people are more important than the others, if a cataclysm comes, then a cataclysm, say the sun explodes and blows up the world and fries half the world, well, therefore, unless the elite know this, of course, and they plan to rush underground in all the caves they've made, the places they've made themselves, and hide from the sun's flares what come along, and then not tell anyone, then maybe that's what they've got planned, and maybe that's then they survive and fry all the rest of the humans, and that's what it won't really matter to them, because it's called survival of the fittest. It's that regardless if people don't want to understand evolution, those with a financial might are more fitted to survive, and they've got the brains as well, and they can hide the best brains, the best technology. They have more fitted, no one can deny they're more fitted to survive any cataclysm than people who are not prepared financially and were not in powerful positions of influence to secure their future. That is survival of the fittest, and they're the most powerful in your way in any tribal system. That's what it is the most, whether it's birds or elephants or tigers or lions, the most powerful entities in any organisation or culture or race or species, they're the ones who survive. And that's the basic principles of survival of the fittest. People won't want to believe in Darwin or evolution, are really deluding themselves. There's a lot of that on the net these days, and it's a dangerous delusion, because I suspect that propagation of there is no evolution at all in the net is also propagated by the same people who don't want you to be alerted to the fact that survival of the fittest, or by natural selection, and the people who are the elite naturally select those who are more likely to breed better and more intelligent people amongst themselves, therefore creating them a more and more quantifiable quality advantage over humanity in many aspects. It's very simple, and to deny that, deny what's in your face. Because all humans have potential, we've got to look at that in what is fair and humane and morally principled towards humanity. Regardless, a lot of humans don't believe in exactly a moral way, especially our politicians and educators and the media today, because they're acting against the society in a very unprincipled way. The only way for society to really gain control over its own destiny is to have a moral principle, whether it's Christianity or it's Islam or it's Buddhism or it's Taoism. All these things and Confucianism, all these things must have at their core, if you like, the basic core, if you like, of these, the focus of them is having a moral principle. Now, you don't have to be religious at all to understand a moral principle that you have as an individual, and after you pass that on to your children, it's an extremely strong thing to have. It's a bonding. It gives you the energy, if you like, because it looks after you physically and mentally and emotionally better than anything else. And those things are far more valuable in the long run as you get older than being really wealthy. You can get really wealthy, but if you're really unhealthy because you're overweight and you're getting dementia because you're drinking too much or whatever, well, you can be really wealthy but extremely impoverished physically, emotionally and mentally. So in other words, how you measure wealth and poverty is basically, up to the individual. If you're into status of the material world, go ahead, but if you're into thinking, I don't care about the status, I just want to keep myself in as good trim as possible, and I'll live within the law as best as I can, then that's a wealthier thing in the end. So the way for people to survive wherever you are in the world is through having strict moral guidelines to pass on to your children, and strict a food regime that passes on healthy nutrition and all understanding to children. It's very simple. So when people are all into committing crime, like in South Africa where it's breaking down, that can't really survive. That's going to degenerate. Any place what goes into criminal, where the criminals of any class, from political leaders, which is a problem in South Africa, as much as it is amongst the people, non-political class, who want to just annihilate all white people. Well, those people will begin, once they've annihilated all white people, continue to annihilate themselves. So they're not going to. They may survive in the end, but it won't be a society anyone would want to actually be in who's got any common sense, because it's definitely a law of the jungle society, and it's not civilized at all. So it becomes a degenerative, and it destroys itself. So having a moral principle and obeying the law and gaining as much knowledge you can is the way to survive. But when it comes to climate change, the best way to do that is lower the cost of basic static capital, your rents. You lower your burden on society, reducing traffic jam by reducing to a 22-hour week, making sure there's enough food grown, and producing enough water out of the air. You can do that individually in each house, if you like, and each house can actually grow its own food this way if it's so designed to, The corporations, unfortunately, they want to own and control all the food growing in the world, and this is a real major problem. The only way to do that, to sort of look at that in reality, is that people ought to learn to grow some nutrition for themselves, just in case. And then by having water out of the air, each region in the world can grow some of the basic nutrition it requires to give feed its people from within its centre, within the town or region or city, can do some of that. And if climate change was serious, a serious problem like they say it is, then they will be looking and organising it different to the way they are, which is impoverishing people, starving the poor people for electricity to basically kill them off, which is part of a eugenics program. Because whoever's behind this are not telling the truth. Everything they say is deception, everything they say is dishonest, and there's a conspiracy to destroy humanity by letting humanity descend and lower the moral principles, but keep the foundations of all civilization. In other words, the media and the politicians and the corporate elite are trying to destroy civilization itself at the moment. My name's Graham. I'm just bringing you the counter to what you've been told in the main media.